my liver, my pancreas, my bladder, in my bones. It was everywhere.
2 years ago, Joe Tippins says he was told to go home, call hospice, and say his goodbyes. The doctors were unanimous. He was going to die of small cell lung cancer.
Once that kind of cancer goes that far afield, the odds of survival are less than 1%, and the median life expectancy is 3 months.
Tippins says he went from 220 pounds to 110, but that was January of 2017. Today, Tippins is very much alive, and what he credits for his survival has doctors scratching their heads and the rest of us raising eyebrows.
About half the people think I'm just crazy, and half the people want to know more and dig deeper.
Tippins says he got a tip, not from a pharmacist, but a veterinarian. And in his desperation, he turned from people medicine to dog medicine, specifically fembendazole, or what you give a dog when it has worms.
Truth is stranger than fiction, you know.
Just 3 months later, Tippins says his cancer was gone.
My insurance company spent $1.2 million on me with traditional means before I switched to a $5 a week medicine that actually saved me.
Prescott says he's now working with Tippins to organize a case study.
We're going to do it and see if we can confirm that in a very rigorous sort of clinical study sort of way that these patients had that kind of response.
As for Tippins,
I've got now over 40 success stories other than me.
He's sharing his story on an online blog that has already been read more than 100,000 times. Most of the feedback, positive or curious. Some, though, accuse Tippins of giving cancer patients false hope.
How do I answer that? I mean, if I've saved one other person other than me, it's worth it to me.
All we know for sure is that Joe Tippins is alive. In time, perhaps we'll also know if this medicine made for man's best friend might also be man's newest cancer cure.
Fascinating. You know, when you're in the fight for your life, you don't care what it is. If it works for you, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says, listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I cannot tell people to take this. I can't. He said, but it worked for me. And if somebody else wants to do the same thing, then they can do it too. Interesting thing, though, is that, you know, he mentioned $5 for that. He says it's actually doubled in price because when you type in fembendazole in Google, one of the first or second things that pops up is cancer cure.
Wow.
So the talk is out there.
More and more people are catching on, but just incredible story. Evan, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Robert Nagorny is an oncologist and cancer researcher. He's desperate to improve the odds for patients who've come to him after all else has failed.
His work is incredible.
Monique Borghese, who traveled to Long Beach from Brazil, is one of those patients. Almost 4 years ago, she was diagnosed with a large tumor near her kidney called an adrenocortical carcinoma.
This is a very aggressive and rare tumor, basically a death sentence.
Just 26 years old, Monique was withering away.
And I wasn't sure she was treatable.
The drug that killed Monique's cancer, better than anything, turned out not to be a cancer drug at all, but rather a common diabetes drug called metformin.
These drugs don't know what diseases they were invented for.
3 months after starting metformin in 2015, Monique got a CAT scan. Her doctor in Brazil gave her the news. While her post-chemo hair was growing back, her lung tumors were shrinking.
It was a miracle.
What metformin is and does is an energy drug. It doesn't stop cells from dividing. It influences their ability to make and use energy. Once we stopped that, her cancers died. Going after cancer cells at the level of metabolism, at the level that they make and use energy, is a fundamental change in our thinking. That's a victory in and of itself.
3 years after starting metformin, the drug is still working. And 4 years after being told she was terminal,
I'm here, I'm fine, and I'm so thankful.
Melanie Kennedy, mother of 2 young boys, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013. It soon spread to her liver. She was given 5 years to live. The clinic recommended she take an antibiotic called doxycycline, metformin, usually used to treat type 2 diabetes, a statin or cholesterol-lowering drug, and mebendazole, a worming agent. Another stumbling block. Doctors are reluctant to prescribe a drug to treat an illness that it wasn't designed for.
We're very loath to use medications outside of the particular reasons that they're licensed for use. And that's because if there are any issues when patients then take those drugs, the doctor is ultimately responsible. There are many benefits of repurposing medications. I suppose the main one is in terms of both time and money. Most new medications cost over $2 billion to bring through the whole clinical trial process and actually license them for use in clinical practice. That takes a long time and is expensive for drug companies and for the NHS.
Drug repurposing is cheaper than developing new medicines because the drug has already been tested for safety, which itself is hugely expensive. Melanie believes this trial has saved her life. But for more trials like this to take place, governments will need to change the incentives for pharmaceutical companies and solve the patent problem.